to the online Hatha yoga classes at Four Directions Yoga Studio during this time of social distancing. I'm here today with our yoga companion and friend, Yogi Betty. And we're going to do a practice today for the neck and shoulders. One of the issues for the neck and shoulders is people have a tendency in day-to-day life of pulling our head, our chin up, tightening our neck and drawing our shoulders up. And we tend to do that when we're stressed, or some people have a habit pattern of when they're thinking, they'll do something like this. And it's a chronic problem that causes very tight connective tissue in the back of the neck and in the shoulders. The other problem that we have for neck and shoulders is a lot of tension in the upper back. So this whole region of the upper back, neck and shoulders works together. And in order to release the neck and shoulders, we have to look at the upper back as well. So today's practice is going to be for upper back, neck and shoulders, and understanding the relationship between those three. Just to start with, if you're sitting or standing or lying down, pay attention to the sensations in the neck and the shoulders. And you can sort of, even lying down, you can drop your head and your chin and just take your head from side to side, not going back yet, but just allowing the head to drop, using the weight of the head to release the neck. So in our practice of Hatha yoga, we try to use the weight of the body to release itself. And sometimes when you're taking your head over to the side, you'll feel a strong but enjoyable stretch, a helpful stretch sensation in that area of the neck. And you might want to linger there a little bit longer, and then you can continue on back to the other side. So this stretch releases tight connective tissue in the upper back and the neck, and it also retrains our habit pattern of how we hold our neck if we tend to pull our chin up. There's a few other things in the body too that we might do that contribute to neck and shoulder problems in terms of our general posture, and I'll try to point those out as we go along. So just to start with, letting the head roll and then neck release from side to side. As a general point about this style of Hatha yoga, we are a little bit slower than some styles of Hatha yoga, and I think slowing down is extremely important. When our body-mind is in a state of constantly trying to keep up, we have a habit pattern reflected in our bodies, in our breathing, in our nervous system of tension and striving and pushing ourselves. And at some point, the body is going to tell us that we have to slow down. So we're going to come now onto the ground, and if you can't get onto the floor, you can use a couch or a bed instead, but you do need to have a fairly good thick blanket under the back of your head so that your neck is long without tensing the throat. So we're not pulling the chin in, and then you bring your hands to the back of your head and you draw your skull up and away from the neck. So at the back of the head, at the back of the skull, where the spine enters the skull, there's like a triangle at the base of the skull. And if you bring your fingers in there and dig around a bit, it can be kind of painful for some people or quite tight. And if you just let the weight of your hand rest on your fingers if you can for a little bit. Just do what you can. If it's very intense, then take your hands away and take a moment, let your chin drop from side to side, and then try that again. This is an extremely important part of the neck and the head in terms of releasing tension. At this point of the skull, just keep pressing your fingers in there and digging around and drawing the chin, the back of the head up so your chin drops down on its own, not from tightening your throat muscles up, but just because you're tilting your own head. And in our practice, we do not do adjustments on each other like this. You only do this to yourself. qualified to adjust other people's bodies. And as you're doing this, when I'm doing this, I can start to feel my lower back release. So the whole spine, all the curves of the spine are related. And if one part of the spine is short, like the neck, in a tight curve, because the neck is so tight, then the lower back will shorten, and vice versa. So then, now that we've released the neck a little bit, you can just see about letting your legs drop from side to side, and you can have your feet on the floor for a few rounds of leg dropping. And no part of the body exists in isolation from any other part of the body. So, but we can focus today on neck and shoulders and upper back. But the legs and feet also relate to that. And then you can draw your knees to your chest, and then see about letting your legs drop from side to side in a little boat, and your arms can be out to the side. So if your shoulder, my knees are on the right, so if my left shoulder were to come up like this, then I can see about exhaling, maybe pressing down through my right elbow to let my upper spine turn to the left. If it still will not drop down on its own, you can get an extra blanket or a pillow and bring it under your arms so it's rested and supported. It's very important that that arm be supported. And then go from side to side here, inhaling and exhaling, and try to exhale when you're moving, because that is the breath that releases the spine and drops tension. A lot of us may have a habit pattern of anticipating, that we have to apply a lot of effort, so we might inhale and then move. That tends to build tension in the body, so keep trying to exhale. Then we're going to leave the legs, for example, over on the left here. And then we'll inhale and exhale and take the right arm up and over. And this is why it's really important to have a pillow under your head, so that when you're lying on your side, your neck is lengthened and it's not compressed by your head being on the floor and your shoulder being on the floor, and your neck can be very uncomfortable. So you can inhale, and as you exhale, drop the upper back towards the floor, and then the shoulder, and then the arm. And if this arm doesn't come to the floor comfortably and completely, support it with that blanket. Another movement you can try for the shoulder here to release the shoulder is to take the right arm and sweep it down by your hip, out past the left fingertips, over your head, and then let your upper back release back towards the floor, and then the arm comes around again in large circles. A few years ago, I hurt my shoulder, and I found this to be excruciatingly painful when I was coming around. And I really discovered at that point how important it is for the upper back to be releasing at the same time. So if it is painful for you when you're doing this, especially these circle ones, if it seems really painful, then go to where it feels okay, lift your arm up, and just work with your body so that it feels fine, that you can do the movement. Part of the problem we get into with our shoulders is if our upper back is out of alignment, it might be flat. It might be flattened. It might have a very large curve in it. If the upper back is out of alignment, then our shoulders take the strain. Okay, so then we'll take the legs over to the other side. That's our Yogi Betty. And we'll inhale, and as you exhale, then take the left arm over to the right. Lengthen it out past the right, and bring the left arm up and back. And as you're doing this, try to experience, how does your upper back come off the floor? Can it come off the floor part by part, bit by bit? As you take the left shoulder blade of the spine, the right shoulder blade off the floor, and then can it come back in a reverse way, as opposed to the whole back coming off the floor all at once and going back all at once. Our back is very jointed. You can think of it as a yoga mat. You pick up the end of the yoga mat, it comes off the floor part by part and comes back to the floor part by part. And you can circle this arm as well. Here, I knocked my water over. As I did this, just be mindful of the stuff around you. And sometimes people will feel this as a tight, they'll feel the tension, not as tight, they'll feel the tension across the collarbone and their upper body, so that is also a really good stretch. And you can come back to the arm over and back again. And then we'll come back to the center. And we'll just try that once more on the other side, circling the arm, letting the upper back come off the floor as the right arm comes down and over to the left. And then letting the upper back come back onto the floor as the arm goes overhead and then back again. This is something, this video will be moving along to the other postures, but this is an excellent posture to stay with. If you don't do the whole video, but you just take a couple of yoga postures and movements from this video to help yourself with your neck and shoulders, this would be excellent. And then you come back to the center when you're ready, and you may have, as I did, slid off the cushion a bit, the folded blanket. And then take your time and see about breath movement here. And it's very important when we're working with releasing tension from any part of the body that we have a released breath. That the belly comes forward when we inhale, into the ribs, into the chest and the shoulders, and back as we exhale. And forward as we inhale, and back as we exhale. And then another movement that you can practice for the neck and shoulders is with feet on the floor, because that keeps the spine long, is we're going to turn our head to the left as the right arm comes up and back. And then inhale and exhale and take the right arm down and then take the left arm up and back. And then you continue with this simple movement. As your arm comes up and over, you're turning away from it. As the arm comes down and then the other arm comes up and over, you turn away from that arm. And then just go back and forth, turning away from the arm that's coming up and over. And this exercise is to help our connective tissue release between the shoulders and the neck. Too often when we are busy during the day, stressed or in a hurry, we treat the body as if it is not articulated, as if it is not jointed. And then the connective tissue gets really tight and the shoulders get really tight and stiff, and we end up with sore neck and shoulders. Right? And then releasing again, and then inhale into the belly and exhale. I'm making a lot of points today about deep breathing because it is essential for the neck and shoulders that we breathe properly. Because the core of the body is in the belly and abdomen, and if the core isn't strong and dynamic, then the shoulders and the neck try to support the body, and they're not designed to do that. So then we're going to come up into bridge pose. If your neck and shoulders are very, very tight, you can keep this blanket under your head. We're going to exhale and come up onto the upper back and the shoulders, and then inhale and exhale and release back down. And if you feel that your neck is fine and you don't need the blanket under your head, you can move it away, and then inhale and exhale and come up. And you might want to bring your arms overhead. I find this really helpful position for the arms for bridge pose in terms of releasing my shoulders. Inhale deeply and exhale and come up again. And then release and come back down. And then there's a box arm exercise we can do for the neck and shoulders. And it has 3 placements for the arms. One is low, and you take your arms from side to side. And then one is in the middle, so your elbows are upright. And then one is overhead. All three of these are really important. They're usually done standing up, but they can be adapted for lying down. And you can feel where in the upper back, trapezius area, you feel the stretch. And then go back to the center one again, the middle height one. And then we'll go down to the low one again. And then inhale and exhale, and we can try bridge again. Exhale and coming up, inhale and exhale and come down. Our practice is not so much about holding postures, it's about moving in and out of them. And then we can see about coming up again, and this time you can bring your hands down towards your feet. If possible, you can interlace your fingers under your hips, and you might roll onto the right shoulder and onto the left shoulder and come up a little higher. Exhale, and then release the arms and come back down. And we'll draw the knees back to the chest and circle the hips, circle the back of the pelvis on the floor in each direction a couple times. And then we're going to roll to the side and come up on our hands and knees. If the shoulders and the neck are exceptionally tight and you have wrist pain, you may need to fold the end of your mat and bring your wrists up onto the end of your mat. I strongly recommend not using your fists on the floor because we're trying to stretch the wrists, and this only tightens them up more, and the problem is there's too much tension in the body already. So we can try cat pose, and you can round your spine up in the air and let your head drop and exhale, and you can inhale, release, and exhale. So for tight neck and shoulders, when I'm practicing cat pose, I do not look up. I do not do this because our necks are already tight enough. We don't want to make them any tighter. So keep exhaling, round the spine up. And again, this is a stretch for the upper back and the neck. You might want to stay there and let your head drop. It takes sometimes a lot of time and practice to let the head drop. I see people sometimes in cat pose, when we're practicing this, we may have a tendency to do cat pose with our head still contracted. So really practice letting your head drop. And then we want to walk the hands over to the side. So I've taken my hands to my left. And you can sit the hips back and stretch into the right side ribs and let the head drop and breathe here. You can round your spine up and dip down and exhale. And when you do this movement, taking your hands to the side and sitting the hips back, you're stretching the area of the shoulder, the outer shoulder, the rib cage. Breathing into the outer ribs, breathing into the shoulder, breathing in, reaching into the hands. So rounding the spine up and dipping down and exhale and rounding up, back to the center and go to the first side again. And you might be able to go a little further to the left, although it's not required that we ever, maximize anything in this practice. We're working on sensations to release the body. That is our agenda here. Rounding up and dipping down, and then back to the right again. Rounding up and dipping down. Okay, so we come back to the center, and we'll see about child's pose. Child's pose, the knees are together, the feet are together, and you drop forward. And for some people, this is a very comfortable posture. They can bring their hands back beside their feet, palms facing up and breathing. And for other people, it's very uncomfortable for the knees and the hips. So you may be needing to take your feet together and your knees apart and then dropping forward, and you can have your arms forward here. But breathing into the lower back, the middle, and the upper back, whichever version of child's pose you find is the most comfortable for you.
Breath is very important. It releases the body from the inside. It releases the connective tissue from the inside. And let yourself slow down. And then slowly we'll come out of child's pose. We're going to come into little dog. So little dog, you walk your elbows forward. Your elbows are about the width of your head apart, not wider. You can walk your knees back a bit. Bring your head down between the elbows and let your chest drop towards the floor. Inhale deeply and exhale. This can be a very strong stretch for some people if the shoulders are very tight. So just take a few breaths. Come out of the posture, walk forward, let your head drop, keep your forearms on the ground. Round the spine up in cat pose and dip down. And exhale and round up, and then walk back again and try that again. And breathe into the shoulder blades and into the upper back. Okay, and then coming up, and then we'll come back to child's pose and rest. Get your arms forward or back, and if you need to bring your knees apart, you can. And some people bring their hands to the back of the head again, and they'll feel the back of the skull and draw that again away from the back of the neck. And then coming up. So we'll try downward facing dog pose, so you can bring your hands about shoulder width apart. For some people, they have to have their arms forward. That may feel more comfortable for a lot of people's wrists as well. And inhale and exhale and take the toes under and stretch the legs. And you can alter the legs. You can bend the right knee and stretch the left leg, and bend the left knee and stretch the right one. And you can go back and forth here a bit. Again, dropping the head. If you find any of these stretches are too difficult and that they create tension for you, then go to a version or a previous posture where you felt you were more comfortable. So now we're going to come into either sitting or kneeling, whatever is more comfortable for you. It really does have to be a comfortable posture, because if you're straining to sit or kneel, then your neck won't be aligned properly. And we're going to do a couple of exercises that I found in this book called Accessing the Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve. Self-Help Exercises for Anxiety, Depression, Trauma, and Autism by Stanley Rosenberg. And these exercises have to do with releasing tension in the back of the neck at the base of the skull. So where we had our fingers at the beginning of the class, that area. So this area, when we get stressed, the connective tissue in the shoulders and the neck get very, very tight. And to the point where our inner ear can't function properly, and we may experience vertigo. There are a lot of reasons people experience vertigo. If you have vertigo, you should go to your doctor and get it properly diagnosed as to the cause. But one of the causes can be major tension in the neck and shoulders, particularly if it comes on suddenly. So these exercises are to release the tension in the back of the neck, and they're very interesting, odd exercises, but they're pretty easy to do, and they're called half salamander. So we're going to start with dropping the neck to the left. So your left ear comes towards your left shoulder, and you let your shoulders relax, and take, let's say, 5 or 6 breaths here. And then inhale and exhale and come up, and then drop your neck, your head to your right shoulder. And for some people, this is not an easy thing to do if our neck is really tight, or if the back of the skull is very tight. And just take your time, hold the posture, breathe here. This area at the back of the skull, where Dr. Stanley Rosenberg is working with us, in his book has is the space where the cranial nerves, there's 12, some people say 13 of them, go in through the lower part. That's where they're located. And the one that he's particularly interested in is the upper and lower vagus nerve, and they have a lot to do with our stress release response. So if this area is occluded, the vagus nerves that travel throughout the whole body are not able to function properly, and they impact digestion, swallowing reflex, breathing, a lot of things. So the next exercise towards half salamander, that was just the warm-up, taking the neck, the head to the left shoulder, and then exhaling and taking your head to the right. You have to take time, breathe, feel the sensations as the neck releases, and then you come back to the center. So this is the one that I find so interesting. We're going to take the eyes to the left, and then we're going to take the head over to the left. And it's not easy to do. Keep your eyes on the left while you drop your head to the left. Coming back, and then take your eyes to the right and drop your head to the right. Keep your eyes on the right. So it seems kind of odd, but the muscles around the eyes impact directly into the muscles at the base of the skull. The muscles around the eyes wrap around, and all connective tissue, etc., connects back to the base of the skull. Come back to the center. This time we're going to take the eyes to the right and drop your head to the left. And Stanley Rosenberg points out, and I would agree, this is usually easier. When we take the eyes to the right, we tend to have, you see if it applies for you, a greater release of taking your neck to the left. Coming back, and last time, we'll take the eyes to the left and bend your neck to the right. And again, you might find it's easier. It's also the third or fourth time we've done this. But the action of taking the eyes to the left releases the muscles to the base of the skull and allows us to drop the neck and the head to the right more deeply with more release. Okay? And then come back to the center. And then feel your neck, feel the shoulders. So we're going to come back again to cat pose and round the spine up and dip down. And always stay within your range of comfort here and what feels natural for your body. We can also try cat pose with the elbows on the ground, rounding the spine up and dipping down. I can show you from the side. Here you exhale and round the spine up, and inhale and release, and exhale and round, and inhale and release. And then if you come, bring your knees to the floor and hips back. So this is child's pose with the knees apart. And you might be able to interlace your fingers and bring your shoulders up, or your hands up, sorry, to stretch your shoulders. If that's not possible, then you can have a yoga belt, which I had here somewhere. Here it is. Okay, so then you can take your yoga belt, hi Betty, and if you cannot interlace your fingers, and you can use this yoga belt and stretch your arms like this. And take a few deep breaths. And then coming up. Come back to cat pose. We're going to do a posture of a cat twist, one variation of cat twist. Always keep your head dropping and neck released. We're going to turn to the left. It doesn't matter what you do with the arm that comes off the floor. The importance here is to keep your shoulders and neck released. So we're just twisting here from side to side. So if this is okay, you can stay here. If you want to try a little bit more of a stretch, and some of you are familiar with the stretch, this is called thread the needle. It's usually something that's better to do with a yoga teacher if you've never done this before, but I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take my right hand and bring my right shoulder to the floor under my left arm, and this right side of my head is on the floor and my chin is in towards the chest. I'm going to take my left foot and bring it out to the side near my right hand. And I'm going to let myself pivot my right knee a bit so my right foot comes sort of in line with the left leg. And then I'm going to take my left arm and see about bringing it up and over. This is a really intense stretch for people. It's what helps me keep my shoulders and my neck comfortable, but it might not be a good thing for everyone, especially if you've never done anything like this before. And then coming up, slowly, mindfully. If that doesn't seem right for you, then you can do child's pose twist. You come into child's pose, hips back. You bring your left shoulder to the floor and the right side, the left side of your head to the floor. That might be all you do. So the right side, you can try that this way. That might be it. If you want to try the stronger version, it's up to you. You take your hands to the right, your left shoulder to the floor. Take a moment and breathe, and then you take your right foot out towards your left hand, sort of level, and then you pivot the left knee and pivot on your left knee, and then see about bringing your right arm up and over. And you can breathe here and take your time, and you might inhale and come out of the posture and exhale and release in. It is a strong stretch. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you're not sure what you're doing, don't do it, come out and go back to child's pose twist. And take your time breathing. And then we'll come out again, and you can see about child's pose twist on the other side, or thread the needle on the other side if you want. In child's pose twist, you can have your arm, your left arm out or ahead of you if you're on your right shoulder. And then we'll come back again, and we're going to do little dog again. This practice is not linear. We circle back to poses that we did previously. For little dog, you can bring your fingertips together and open the palms of your hands. Some people often, when they're practicing little dog, they'll take their chest, their back, upper back and chest forward. No, it's actually dropping towards the floor. It's a much stronger stretch this way. It's much more beneficial. And then we'll come up again. Okay, great. So then you can see about stretching the arms up and side bending to the right and to the left. And then we're coming up. And so we're going to come back to downward facing dog pose again. We'll inhale and exhale and come back to downward dog. And lengthen the spine, separate the feet if you need to, take them further away from the hands, stretch into the palms. 2 or 3 breaths. And then we'll bring the knees to the floor and come back into child's pose. And we'll try cobra. So we're going to inhale, exhale, round the spine up, and let the pelvis come down and the spine open in cobra. And then inhale and exhale and go back into child's pose. And try that a couple of times, rounding the spine up to come into cobra. And then inhale and exhale and go back to child's pose. Okay, and let your head drop, release the neck, and feel again that area at the base of the skull. Be mindful of releasing the back of the neck and the base of the skull. And those points where at the base of the skull, where the cranial nerves that Rosenberg discusses in his book are centered, and they need a lot of room, and they relate to stress release. So then we're going to come up to standing. So you can come into standing forward bend to start with, and back into standing forward bend, and let the head drop and the neck release. And if you need a yoga block, you can get a yoga block if you can't reach the floor comfortably. And if you don't have a block, you can use a pillow, and then your head drop and you release your neck. And we'll try a standing twist here. You can turn to the left, the right hand on the block or the floor in standing forward bend, or turn to the right. And just be aware when you're trying these yoga postures that you are mindful of what you do with your breath, of what you do with your neck and shoulders, that you don't treat the yoga postures as another means of stressing and harming your body. Then you can also hold the elbows maybe in the standing forward bend posture, take a few breaths, and then we're going to bend the knees and come up to standing. And bring yourself all the way up, and you can see about twisting the upper body, so soften the knees, and let your arms drop as you twist from side to side. And then range of motion for the shoulder is really important for stress release in the shoulders and neck. So we're going to stand sideways to the wall. And one thing to remember is that you decide how close to the wall you want to be. In general, with these exercises, the closer we are to the wall, the stronger this is. So if you stand very close to the wall and bring your arm up, some of us can't bring the arm straight up this way. You may need to bring it forward, which is fine. So wherever you are is okay. And then you can come onto your toes, stretch your arm way up. Try to leave your hand where it is on the wall and descend your heels. That's a big stretch for the side ribs. So you come onto the toes, stretch the arm, inhale, exhale, and then slowly begin to descend the heels. And then you can see about taking the arm back and around forward. If that is way too strong for your body, do not give up. Move away from the wall. Movement is really important. We have a condition some people get of carpal tunnel, which has a lot to do with issues in the shoulder and in the collarbones. At the front of the collarbone, there's a thoracic outlet, which is where a lot of nerve material comes through for the hand and the wrist. And if that's occluded and tight, then you can get pins and needles in your arms at night and very uncomfortable. Even during the day, some people have them. So these stretches, especially this one, to open the chest and the area around the collarbone. So you can experiment again with distances away from the wall and taking your hand in circles. If you find it's really difficult to do, just do what you're comfortable with. I think any amount of stretching for us is a huge benefit. So for the other side, you come onto the toes, walk your hand up the wall a bit, and then see about descending the heels. Inhale and exhale, and then try that again. Leaving your hand where it was, really strong. If it feels too much, just come away from the wall. Take your hand up and descend the heels. Whatever you do to try to help yourself, in stretching a little bit more than you normally do is fantastic. And then you can see about, this arm circling on the wall. Again, do what you feel you can do. So people with frozen shoulder or major shoulder pain, you may need to come quite a ways out from the wall to be able to circle the arm and use the wall for support as you're doing that. If you have a little bit more mobility in the shoulder, you can come in really close and move. mentioned, so a couple of arm stretches. I mentioned this one that we did lying on the floor. This is for the lower trapezius muscles so that it has proper function. The function of it is released more. This is for the middle trapezius muscle, the middle part of the trapezius muscle, and this is for the upper part. So prolonged sitting, prolonged tension in the upper back and the shoulders. The trapezius muscle, which is the big diamond-shaped muscle in the back, can kind of shorten or atrophy or not function properly, and then lower. And then another one I really like for the shoulders is similar to what we just did, but is this free arm, free meaning without the wall, arm circling, forward and backwards and forwards, and then try the other arm. And again, anything you can do is helpful. Even if this is what your arm circle looks like right now, that's great. It's some movement in the shoulders and the arms. Connective tissue, in order for us to feel good, our connective tissue has to move. So prolonged sitting or stressing in a car, at a desk is harmful. So we can take the arms apart. What I just did there was called eagle arms. I crossed my elbows, intertwined my forearms. If you can't do that, you can do this hug movement. If that's impossible, you can do the box arm movement. And so again, whatever you find is possible for your body. And then we're going to circle the upper body and the arms. Big circles. And go in the other direction. And wide again, and then circle. It can be really a strong stretch for parts of the shoulders, certain muscles within the shoulder and the upper back, and circle in both directions. And then releasing. And then when you take the arms and the hands and interlace the hands, stretch into the wrists, and then see about dropping forward. So I took my feet about one leg length apart, interlace the hands, and then see about stretching into the arms here. Inhale and exhale, and let your head drop, and let your neck release, and keep dropping, dropping, and dropping. And then you bring your hands to the floor. If they don't come to the floor, you can use your book or block or your pillow. And we're going to do that twist again. So the left hand is in the floor. Keep the neck softened and released. Remember, watch the habit pattern to lift your chin and go from side to side. So, and then when you're ready, come back to the center and exhale and drop forward. And then we'll walk the feet back to the center, and then we'll bend the knees and inhale and exhale and come up to standing and stretch up and back. We'll also try, so one of the other aspects of the neck and shoulders, as I mentioned before, the whole body is integrated together. So if we're very, very tight in the hip flexors, and we have a tendency to tilt, then our whole body feels like it's falling forward, and it resists and tightens, and then my neck and shoulders have to do this to see forward. So what we try to do is release the quads and the hip flexors so that when I stand, I'm in alignment. And get some water. So, in order to do that, to bring ourselves into alignment, I have to release the quads and the hip flexors. So we're going to try Warrior One. And you stand in mountain pose. And then you can see, well, I'll stand this way. You can stand in mountain pose and then step the right foot forward. And bend your right knee. And you start to get a stretch at the front of the left thigh and hip flexors. And keep your back long, so let your pelvis drop. Let the front of the rib cage drop. And you might bring your arms up or out to the sides. And then release the spine and the shoulders and the foot and back. And then we'll take the other leg forward. So the left foot forward, bend the left knee. Inhale and exhale. Allow the front of the right thigh to stretch. Your arms can be at the thighs or they can be up. Whatever's more comfortable, especially on your neck and shoulders. So if coming up with the arms is creating more tension for you, then leave them at the sides. And then release and come back. And then we can see about trying that one more time. I guess we'll take the right foot forward again. Bend the right knee and allow the stretch through the left hip. Inhale and exhale and see where your arms are best for you. Releasing, and then we'll try the other side. With the breath. And the pelvis can release with the breath as we inhale and exhale. It kind of sets up a bit of a pelvic tilt. And then bring the arms down and come back. And then feel where your posture is. See if you can really feel that you can center yourself over the front of the heel and feel the toe ball joints. You might sway a bit from side to side and front to back. But if our whole postural alignment improves, our neck and shoulders is supported in a relaxed posture. Another shoulder stretch to do is with the belt. So to take the belt, and you can wrap your belt around your hands. If you don't have a yoga belt, you can use a bathrobe tie or an old necktie or a piece of rope. And you try not to bend the elbows. So you bring the arms back and then forward. And then inhale and exhale back and forward. I've had students with frozen shoulder find that this is particularly helpful for them. You can see about tilting and going back and forward, and then there's sort of almost like a figure 8 movement. The left arm can come forward and back, and then the right arm up and around, and this can be quite strong. When the shoulders can't move or don't move very much, the connective tissue forms these really tight aspects of themselves or lesions, and the discomfort we feel when we stretch is that tension sometimes breaking down. And so you can go from side to side again and back and forth. So if keeping the arms straight, the elbows straight is too difficult, then let one elbow bend. And then slowly work up to both elbows being straight, and you might need to have more belt between your hands, like give yourself more belt. If that's too easy, then use less belt. It's really a counter posture, right, for this day-to-day posture people have of driving or being on a computer or working with tools or things like that. So it's a fabulous stretch to do, and then you can let the belt go, and then you can shake your hands here and stretch them. And this is another one of the things, if you just take a couple of postures out of this video to help yourself with your shoulders and upper body, this is a really good one to do, of shaking the hands and stretching them. So going one more pose for the quads and our hip flexors is lunge pose. So you can drop forward again here in standing forward bends, dropping, and then we can step the left foot back and bring the left knee to the floor. If the left knee is sensitive on the floor, you can put a blanket underneath it. And then you can inhale and exhale and see about coming up. So if these muscles are tight, the psoas and quadricep muscles are tight, they can really throw off our posture, and that will put our head in a forward head position, which can cause a lot of discomfort in neck and shoulders. And breathing here, and then coming back, and then you can take the right foot back, the right knee back, and bring the left foot forward for a lunge pose with the right leg back, and then see about coming up here. And then deeply inhale and exhale. And then coming down. So a few more postures to help us with neck and shoulders. If we come to sitting, and you can sit on a blanket or a cushion, even a chair if sitting on the floor isn't possible. And we're going to twist. So basically just a really simple twist is however you're sitting on a chair or the floor, you inhale, exhale, turn your spine to the right, and then bring your hand around. And as you inhale, you can come out of the twist and exhale and move in. So what I did there was I turned my spine in the direction I'm going, and then I used my hand to support. The reason I did that is when we move the spine into the twist first, and then support it with the arms, we're working the nerves and the muscles of the back, of the upper back and the front of the body to create the twisting movement. So we're waking those muscles up. Instead of, if I use my arms to twist, keeping those muscles passive, we want those muscles to be, and the nerves around them to be awake and functioning properly so that they get good circulation and that they're articulated and they can move. And so twist and then use the arms. And then one of my favorite postures for myself for upper back and shoulders is shoulder stand. So that's a bit of a difficult posture for people, especially if they're beginners. I'll show you one way to go into shoulder stand. People who have whiplash or herniated discs in their neck and their back should not do this posture. But you can, if you don't have those conditions and your neck is healthy, just tight, you can try this. So you sit with your feet on the floor, and then you inhale and exhale, and you roll back, and you don't turn your head when you're doing this. Sometimes people can suspend themselves here. You might be able to bring your hands in under your hips and bring your legs up. Okay? If you can bring them up far, that's fine. If you can just bring them here, your arms overhead, that's great. Okay? And then rolling. And then you might try it again. Inhale and exhale and roll back towards shoulder stand and hang out, literally hanging out, shoulder stand. And if you can, you bring your hands behind your lower back or hips and come up. And inhale and exhale down. So if that is impossible, do not be discouraged. We all start somewhere. So sometimes what people find is the best way to practice that is to come to the wall, lie with or sit with your hip really close to the wall, and swing yourself around so your legs are off the wall. And this might be all you do, is just rest with your legs up the wall. This is very helpful for releasing the shoulders. But if you want to do an active version of shoulder stand, you bend your knees, bring your feet to the wall, press into the wall with your feet and come up, and then release and come down. If this is very new to you and you don't have whiplash in your neck, you don't have a herniated disc, I would just try coming up and down. If you do have a serious neck problem like whiplash or herniated disc in your neck, just stay on the floor with your hips on the floor and your legs up the wall and rest. Okay, and so one more time, if you want to try this for your neck, you come up and down. Arms can be overhead, or they can be at your sides. And then afterwards, you can bend your knees at the wall and let your hips drop from side to side, and your feet come all the way to the floor. To the right and to the left. This is very much like little boat. This is the same thing as little boat when we started, but now the wall acts as a guide and it helps your upper back to release. Remember, shoulder and neck problems often relate to what's going on in our upper backs. And then the last posture I wanted to show you is called supported fish pose. So supported fish pose, you can take a thick folded blanket or towel. Usually in yoga studios we have a yoga bolster, which you can have at home maybe, but a lot of people don't have that at home. And then they see someone using it in a yoga studio and they think, I can't do that posture because I don't have that equipment. But when we're doing homemade yoga, you have to use what you have. So I folded this blanket fairly thickly and it's going to go under my upper back, right at the thoracic spine, the upper back spine. And then I'm going to draw my head away again and I'd like the top of the back of my head at the top of it. So not the top of the head, the back of the head, resting on the floor. And then adjust yourself so it's really at the tightest part of your upper back. And if you feel that your neck is shortening here, or you're not quite at the back of the head, you're a little too close to the top, you bring a lower blanket under the back of your head. For people with frozen shoulder or painful shoulders, this is a really helpful posture to do. However, the action of bringing the arms up and over for some people can create a real pinched sensation in the shoulder. And if that happens, you need to bring a pillow or a block under that arm. Okay, so what's happening there is the spine and the back and the ribs are not releasing enough for the whole kinetic chain here to release. And so the area of the shoulder is getting pinched. And then to slowly release that, you elevate the arm with the support. So this is supported fish pose, and you can stay here as long as you'd like. When you have tight upper back and our back is really tensed up from sitting, driving, standing, at work, over a counter or something that we do with tools, too long, then the chest collapses and the upper back gets tighter and tighter. Another thing you can do with supported fish is bend your right knee and slowly roll a little bit to the left ribs, and then coming back, bend your left knee, stretch the right leg out and roll a little bit to the right. And this can be quite strong. I find the less wide this blanket, folded blanket is that we lie on, the stronger this stretch is into the upper back and the shoulders. And we have a lot of nerve tissue in the area of the upper back, and it's just so important to allow the upper back and chest to have space. You can stay there as long as you'd like, and then when you're ready, we'll take this folded rolled blanket away. Keep the blanket for under your head and lie back. Again, adjust the neck and the shoulders. Here at the back of your skull, and then adjust your shoulders. You can roll them away from your head and you can rest. And you might try resting with palms facing the ceiling for a few minutes, as long as it's comfortable for your body. If your lower back is uncomfortable, then you can bend your knees and bring your feet to the floor. And then stay in the posture and take your time with your breath. So your inhalation breath into the belly, ribs, chest, and your exhalation breath, and let your belly sink back. And feel that that movement of breath can support the openness and the shoulders and the chest and the length of your spine. And it can support the entire spine, that movement of breath internally. Very important to get that feeling of a released breath. And for those of us who have, some people will have a really tight right shoulder or a really tight area in their upper back in one specific spot. Take the time at the end of this class now to let your eyes close and breathe into that area. Feel that your breath can move into this tightest area of your shoulders, your neck, and your upper back. Okay, and then out and out, and while you're lying there, again, remember to let the back of your neck stay long. Our neck and shoulders and upper back do a lot of work for us, and so it's really important to support them with a good yoga practice and with just mindfulness throughout the day. So thank you, namaste. Thank you, Yogi Betty, for your inspiration. And have a great rest of the day.